We are joined today by Preston Byrne, the illustrious attorney representing both 4chan and Kiwi Farms, which is awesome in a lot of different ways, against the United Kingdom's Office of Communication, Ofcom, and their platform and campaign of censorship against Americans. Say hello to the entire internet, Preston.
Hello again, Internet. Good to see you as usual.
I've got a lot of questions I want to ask. Let's start with a very high level look at how things have gone so far, what this story is, what the UK is doing, what you are doing in response with 4chan and all that. Give everyone the elevator pitch here.
Sure. So our story begins in the year of our Lord 1776.
It's a good year.
When the United States declared its independence from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. But moving forward, right, to 1791, comparatively more recently, we enacted this thing called the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And what that has meant as a practical consequence, the judge-made principles that have emerged since then, is that Americans can pretty much say whatever they want, right? We can say whatever, whenever, to whomever we want, without interference from some other country or even our own government. Right?
I use that darn thing every day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's the First Amendment's amazing. Now the First Amendment also applies to the things we do online, right? It applies to both the speech that you utter online. It protects your right to be anonymous online. It protects your right to encrypt. It protects your right to host a web server and allow other people to engage in protected and non-protected expression, right? People can commit crimes on your services. And as long as you're not specifically trying to bring about the criminal result, right, with certain limited exceptions, you're immune from the content that you host. So the United States protects speech very, very widely. And for a long time, there have been, and I've been doing this for 9 years now, I've been defending American companies from foreign censorship. Foreign censors have been trying to break into the United States and take those rights away. And that has taken the form usually of letters and demands and nastygrams and scary notices saying, we're going to do terrible things to you if you don't censor other American citizens or censor yourself, right? If you're saying a US website, you can't host this content because we disagree with it, you're not just censoring the users of the site, you're also infringing on the First Amendment rights of the person who hosts it. And so this has been going on for about 10 years. These, various other countries, were initially working with the Biden administration. The Biden administration was encouraging these foreign countries to accomplish by the back door what the First Amendment prevented the Biden administration from doing through the front. And with the Biden administration leaving power, all of these censorship regimes that were planned during the Biden administration are all starting to come online. And the first of those was the UK's Online Safety Act. And so basically the Online Safety Act is a censorship law. If you ask the British politicians about it, they'll tell you, no, it's about keeping people safe online. That's not correct. That's untrue. Yeah. It's a censorship law which says that you can't host certain things that are legal in the United States. You have to take down content, right, that's legal in the United States. You have to, verify the identity of your users in the United States. And they run around saying, well, this only applies to UK users of the service, right? No, it's American users, right, aren't affected by this. But the First Amendment protects an American's right to talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime about anything, right? And
it's
so the
pretty doggone broad, yeah.
It's very broad. So I have a First Amendment right sitting here in the United States to host a web server and talk to a Brit about whatever I want. And there is no power on earth, right, that is going to be able to get into the United States and override that, unless they're prepared to invade militarily, which I'm pretty sure the UK isn't. So
I would like to see World War III start because of 4chan. And I think, honestly, there's a lot of 4chan users that would think that was pretty rad, too.
We'd have to call it World War B if that were the case. So the UK has been running around and they've had this strategy. They picked 4 of the most controversial websites on the internet. They picked 4chan, a mental health web forum called Sanctioned Suicide, Gab, and Kiwi Farms.
Yeah.
And they set those 4 websites, all social media websites, all operate in the United States. Not a single one of them violates US law. Everything they're doing is protected by the Constitution. And they sent them demands, and they threatened these websites with ruinous fines up to $25 million, arrest and imprisonment of up to 6 months for just refusing an information demand, and up to 2 years if they gave a misleading response. And they said, listen, we're going to arrest you, fine you, jail you if you don't follow our orders, if you don't disclose information to us contrary to your Fourth Amendment rights, and if you don't censor your websites and perform risk assessments and produce these regulatory documents in violation of your First Amendment rights. And the UK tried to bluff. So what they did is they picked the most controversial websites in the world. I think they assumed that none of them would have a defense. And so they wanted to isolate them in confidential proceedings, one after the other. I think they assumed that they wouldn't respond and they wouldn't fight back, and they'd just ignore the notices. They'd walk through their regulatory process. They'd show everyone how the regulatory enforcement process works. And then they'd get these orders, which are unenforceable in the United States, and they'd wave them around in Americans' faces and say, look how successful we are. See, this is what will happen to you, X. This will happen to you, Facebook. This
and
is
then everyone else caves.
And then everyone else would cave.
Yeah.
The problem is, two things happened. The first one is that the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan and the GOP-controlled House Judiciary Committee of the United States House of Representatives served continuing subpoenas on all of the big social media networks, ordering them to disclose any contact that they had with a foreign censor, right? So any inbound contact from foreign censors was immediately subject to U.S. oversight. So Ofcom was unable to get in there. Then what they did is they went after these highly controversial, high-risk websites, probably assuming two things, right? One, that they wouldn't be able to obtain counsel, right? Two, that their counsel wouldn't know, well, three things. One, they wouldn't be able to obtain counsel. Two, their counsel wouldn't know what they were doing. And three, that the US government wouldn't care. And they were wrong on all 3 points, because I've been doing this for 8 years, right? And I'm also English qualified, so I understand how the online safety works. So I mean, they kind of like, it was kind of the absolute, they had the absolute worst case set of facts present themselves that they didn't know about, which is that a dual qualified English American lawyer who happens to be a free speech activist and happens to be the only lawyer on the planet who's refused European free speech or rather European censorship demands before. As far as I'm aware, no one else ever has.
Was on the other someone side. Like you exists, my dude.
Decided to take and was free and available, because I'm currently in solo practice. If I were at a big firm, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Yeah.
And was able to represent all 4 companies pro bono and coordinate the defense across the industry. So they basically had the absolute nightmare set of facts presented to them. And what's going on is they're going through they're going through this exercise where they're performing mock executions of the American companies, sending them notices. And the response to what their strategy was, which was like isolate, confidential, try to increase credibility through performative enforcement that's not actually enforceable. Our strategy has been essentially the reverse, which is sunlight, sovereignty, and speed, right? We expose what's going on. We publish everything that's received. We supply these documents to the government of the United States, which recently announced, it was leaked to the Telegraph that they're going to be performing retaliatory visa bans against a British censor who's working in the United States. And they're also, we've also been pushing a shield law, a foreign censorship shield law. Wyoming has a draft bill at the moment.
Yeah.
It hasn't been produced. New Hampshire is working on a draft bill. There's some parliamentary procedure things that need to be addressed. But if we can get it in this session, that could be enacted as early as January. And what we're doing is we're organizing a resistance in the United States, and we're fighting back. And so far it's been coordinated largely just me. But now we're starting, which is fine. Sometimes you got to be the guy.
Hey, someone's got to be Frodo in the case. You know what I mean? I mean, someone has to do that. That's how all of these things work.
Short, hairy guy with big feet. So
that was exactly what I was thinking.
So what they say about guys with big feet. But the
so how does you've got multiple prongs to respond to this, right? Let's kind of go down a few of these here so people know really what's happening. Let's first talk about these proposed laws. So we've got basically like was it 2 of them, right? 2 different proposed laws.
Well, there's one law which follows one template that's being adapted by state legislatures. I've got apparently North Dakota is starting to look at it. That's the rumor. We know I know for a fact New Hampshire's looking at it, and I've seen Wyoming's draft. I also know, and I'm not going to name names, but there are some prominent Congress people who are looking at this as well. I'm not going to say who. I've been contacted by their offices, and so hopefully they'll decide to do something too. But essentially, the law does 2 things. The first thing that it does is it confirms, right, the common law principle, the judge-made principle, that foreign censorship judgments are not enforceable in the United States. Because at the moment, if a foreign censor comes to us we've got a bunch of tangential like analogies, right? We can say, well, this principle, if you add it all up,
Right.
the likelihood is, well, let's say 99.8% that you're not going to get your order enforced here. And so that's enough to keep them away. But if we had a statute that just said, listen, it's not enforceable here, you just point to the section and you say, go, right? We've got the law. We're not interested in hearing from you. The second thing it does is it takes away sovereign immunity. So a foreign government or a foreign instrumentality is immune from suit for sovereign actions in the United States as a general rule. And what in fact, Ofcom, in their letter to 4chan, they issued something which they call a confirmation decision, which is basically their decision that they're determined to issue a fine. Fine 4chan £20,000 plus £100 daily fines for 60 days.
Right.
And in that decision, right, so we filed a lawsuit against Ofcom in the District of Columbia, the federal district court in the District of Columbia. And we were trying to kind of draw them out and try to understand what their posture was going to be in response to that lawsuit, right? Because there are some significant hurdles with an entity that is potentially going to be a sovereign instrumentality. And they wrote in their letter, right, they still haven't answered the lawsuit. We expect that they probably will.
They haven't answered it at all yet.
They haven't answered it all, but I'm expecting that they will.
Okay.
But they said in their letter to us, they said, listen, we're reserving the right to claim sovereign immunity. And we just went, thank you. That is a gift, because we then went to Congress and everybody else and said, look what's happening. A foreign government is sending notices across our borders. Those notices are telling Americans they'll be thrown in jail for exercising their constitutional rights and violating no law here. And moreover, when you push back using the American court system, right, not only does the foreign government say, your rights don't matter and they don't exist and we don't think we're subject to American rules and we can enforce our laws on your soil, they then turn around and say, except for one law, which is the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, which we're going to invoke in our own defense. And from our perspective, that's outrageous, right? You should not be trampling on American civil rights, and then the moment an American decides to hold you to account, you turn around and say,
American law in order to protect yourself.
Oh, right. American law is no good when you need it, right? But when we need it, we're going to invoke that immediately. And so, there are some hurdles in the lawsuit that we filed in the DDC, but the purpose of the lawsuit really was to flush them out. And we got them to do exactly what we wanted them to do, which is to show that they're really, it's a very steep climb for a private company in the United States to take on a sovereign, right? And so we went to the people who are the custodians of American sovereignty, our Congress people and the executive branch, and said, look, this is a sovereign on sovereign fight. It needs a sovereign answer. And so what we've proposed with these shield laws is, one, that there's a shield, two, that sovereign immunity is removed, and three, that a cause of action is created, right? Because once you pulled sovereign immunity, you get the opportunity to sue. And we said, listen, you need to create a cause of action so we can sue these foreign governments and recover financial damages from them equal to the amount of the threatened fines. So if they threaten Facebook with 10% of its annual revenue as a fine, Facebook's annual revenues are $164 billion. That would create a cause of action, and Meta, not Facebook, Meta would be able to get a $16.4 billion judgment against the United Kingdom. And guess what? Because all of these other countries aren't the center of the universe, and we are, at least at this point in time, and hopefully
a little bit,
hopefully for the rest of the century. But because we're the center of the Western world, they all have tens of billions of dollars in our banks in order to prop up their currencies. Right. So as a consequence, Britain has 47 billion pounds in North American banks. And if we take away their sovereign immunity, guess what? You can get at those assets to satisfy a judgment.
You could seize the assets in the United States. So that was my next question is if you were, let's say you're 4chan and you're like, okay, great, there's no sovereign immunity, I want to go after, you sue them in the United States. But then how do you actually enforce that? Because they're across the friggin' pond and they have their own set of laws. But if they've got funds here.
Their money's here. So that's the trick.
Click.
So
got it.
And then it's a very simple cost benefit analysis for them, right? And it's, listen, we acknowledge your country can have its laws and you can do whatever you want on your soil with your own people. That's your decision. But on our turf, we make the rules, and we can make a rule that says you can't send into the United States a notice which tells an American that they have to censor themselves and they have to surrender their constitutional rights on pain of fines and imprisonment. Because if you do that, they're going to sue you and they're going to seize your U.S. Citus assets. And so that is what we are trying to get through. The shield law that I've seen for Wyoming has that in it. The shield law I proposed to New Hampshire has that in it. And it's really just a question of whether, and of course, because sovereign immunity is a federal question, the states can enact whatever rule they want, but ultimately federal action in order to make this stick. And so we're trying to get the states in to show that there's a first mover, that it's safe, that it's something which is politically acceptable and politically powerful.
And then we need the federal government to enact something
And then
similar.
we need the federal government to follow up.
Okay.
And there's a lot of interest. I mean, they've seen, the U.S. federal government has seen every piece of correspondence. So London, if you're watching this, they've seen it all. They don't buy, the line of, horse pucky that you gave to them back in March and April and May of this year, where you said, no, it's just about protecting the kids, because they saw websites. Gab, for example, doesn't allow adult content. It's run by a Christian nationalist. It is purely political speech on that site. And they saw the notices that you sent threatening them, right, with fines and imprisonment for not censoring their site. And we know what it's all about. And 4chan, yes, B is B, right? And that's a very strange word, but ultimately
it is.
It's not illegal in the United States to do what they're doing.
Right.
And so, we all understand, right, very, very clearly, if we give an inch here, if we don't protect every American company, if we don't protect the companies who are controversial, if we allow them to get a clean precedent that the rest of the market looks at and says, Ofcom won, right? If we allow that to happen, then we've lost the First Amendment.
Right.
And so from my perspective, the objective of this exercise, right, Ofcom is going to be able to get, in the UK, right, UK laws go. They're going to be able to get whatever orders they want. They can issue whatever fine they want.
They can run rampant over there. Yeah.
They can do what they want in their own country. But the principle is, one, they can't do it here. And two, we're going to taunt them like crazy, letting them know, dead serious, letting them know, listen, if you want to send a letter into the United States, you do that. You're going to have me or some other lawyer who's seen exactly what I did on the other side. They're going to know what the rules are. They're going to know how the game is played. They're going to have reviewed the playbook that you've run with half a dozen other U.S. companies, and they're going to see the results of what that playbook achieved, which is precisely nothing. And that is what I have been doing this very, very publicly. I've published all of the 4chan documentation. Yeah. We've released the documents for Gab. We've released. I'm not sure we've released the Kiwi Farms documents, but they're actually, those are actually fairly thin. There wasn't a lot of back and forth there. And we've released all of the sanctioned suicide documents. So every practitioner in the United States who is even remotely interested in this issue knows exactly how the game is played, has reviewed the documents, has worked out for themselves what the defenses are, right? And has worked out for themselves, what the nature of the infringement is on the First Amendment. And I can tell you, I'm not going to give Ofcom access to my site analytics. These documents have been seen tens of thousands of times. Yeah. Tens of thousands. So the purpose of leaking them, releasing them, there was no obligation to keep them confidential.
Right.
The purpose of releasing them was to inform the American bar, the American government, state legislators, everybody, all at once. This is what's happening, and this is what awaits us if we don't put this to a stop now.
Genius. And I loved when you filed the suit against Ofcom. I got to thank you, because I read a lot of lawsuits and financial reports and whatnot, and they make my brain ooze out of my ears from sheer boredom. But the suit that Kiwi Farms and 4chan that you filed on their behalf to Ofcom was one of the funniest bit of inter-country trolling I think I have seen in a very long time. You had literally significant parts in there, and it was all very factual and very respectful and proper and everything. But you had basically like history and geography rudimentary lessons for the British government in there. They're like, I don't know if you know this.
We were pleading the facts. And if they choose to answer the lawsuit rather than doing a limited appearance to contest jurisdiction, I certainly would like to see them deny, right, that Delaware
is in the United States, but not the UK.
It's an independent country, right? So if they want to, because you go through and you say admitted, neither admitted nor denied, whatever. If they want to deny that we're an independent country, that's certainly open to them. I would also give some credit, actually quite a lot of credit, to my co-counsel Ron Coleman, who you may know from the internet. He also lives on the internet as I do.
He does.
And Ron is very funny. And so my
it was
V1,
amusing as heck.
Yeah, but my V1 was more on the English law side. Ron made it deeply, deeply hilarious, but like factual, right? We're pleading facts.
Yeah, it was basically like, I don't know if you've heard about this little thing called the American Revolution. Have you heard of that? Like, I mean, it wasn't quite that snarky, but it was like you could feel the snarkiness ooze out from the words, and it was genius. It was so good.
Thank you. I mean, thank you very much. But I mean, that's part of the strategy. right? Again, we have to let if any foreign censor, right? There are two things that need to happen. One of them is, from a legal perspective, you assert your client's rights and defenses, and that's exactly what we did, right? From a political perspective, they must be disincentivized from ever doing this again, right? And I don't care, people will object to, particularly in London, I know for a fact, people very much object to our tone, right? Which is dismissive and disrespectful. Well, you know what? You know what else is dismissive and disrespectful? Sending an email to an American citizen and telling them that they've surrendered their constitutional rights. If they're turning around and telling us, oh, well, you're ignoring the Online Safety Act. Okay, fine. You're ignoring US federal law. So, and when they want to get serious, I'll get serious.
But until such what are British politicians expecting? That's literally who we are, is dismissive and disrespectful. That's like us as a country. That's like our whole relationship with the UK. We just know we're different.
We don't do what they say. We don't answer to them. And we have been explaining this now to them. I have explained this to the British government in respect of 4 separate cases going on 10 months. They cannot, it's ridiculous. We're at a situation now where they've issued a fine notice in the case of 4chan, and 4chan has been like, whatever, we're not dealing with it. Everybody knows that fine's never getting enforced.
Right.
The American bar knows, Congress knows, every judge who reads it in the United States knows, the president knows. In England, Ofcom probably knows. The British government knows. They've said as much. Yeah, how could they not? Every single member of the English bar is familiar with has any experience in cross-jurisdictional practice ever in their entire careers will know this order is not enforceable in the United States unless you get it enforced here. And anyone who's familiar with the United States knows it's not going to be enforced. So we've gotten to the situation, which is very emperor's new clothes, right? Where in London, everyone's too polite, right, to turn around and go, guys, I really hate to break it to you, but this isn't going to work. Maybe you should try something else. They're so committed to it that they can't break off. They can't break off the attack. They have to keep pressing it. And the more they press, the more opportunities we're going to have to say no.
Fantastic.
And the more we say no, the more ridiculous the attempt looks. And like there are off ramps here for them, right? If they wanted to,
they're not going to take them.
But they could, and they're dignified off ramps. They could turn around as part of the trade deal with the United States and agree some trade language in the agreement, which hasn't been concluded, right? They've agreed the high terms, but the trade agreement between the U.S. and the U.K. is not done.
That's true.
And they could say, listen, we agree that we're not going to do things to your citizens that are illegal in your territory. And then there's a bit of the Online Safety Act called Section 44, which says that DCIT, the Department of Science, Information and Technology, can issue directives to Ofcom saying we have an international agreement and now you've got to abide by it. Okay, you don't amend the Online Safety Act. Don't amend your codes of practice. You only enforce it when you can enforce it, which is either with the UK within its borders or with a country that has a mutual recognition agreement. And this is like how international law has been done for the entirety of the Westphalian system. This has been going on for 600 years, 500 years. So we're not talking about anything new. But the UK and the global censors, they're guys who hung out at WEF a lot. They talked about global harmonization a lot.
Yeah.
And they thought they could bluff their way into a global regulatory regime, and they tried to do exactly that, but their bluff got called immediately. And 10 months later, they still haven't gotten the message.
Do you think that they actually have it within them to back off of it? Like, I mean, they just seem so committed. They've put their image almost at stake in pushing all of the Ofcom stuff and the censorship stuff through and to the max. Like, that's almost who they are now. I mean, that's just admitting defeat if they let it go.
But like, okay, let's
they should. I agree, but
let's run down the alternatives, right? So like I'm sure over in London, a lot of people think I'm some just free speech maximalist who hates everyone and wants the internet to be unsafe. But like, there are alternatives here, right? And as a practical matter, having represented social media companies for 10 years, the thing that keeps people safe is the rapid apprehension of dangerous people as soon as they have shown themselves to be dangerous. And what that means is two things. One, you need data, right? You need to know who this person is, where they are, and how to get a hold of them. And two, you need them to open their big fat mouth and expose themselves to the world. That's serious. That's right. Why do you think the FBI, right? Why do you think they troll all these social media websites? Because people say stupid things when they're not feeling well, or they're losing their marbles, or they just want to communicate. Some lone wolf type actor wants to talk to somebody else, and they reveal their hand. And then what do? You get a subpoena, you get a search warrant, you serve it on the website, You say, okay, this is a forthwith subpoena. We need this information right fucking now. And you have the data in less than 2 hours, right? So the UK could have that if they turned around, harmonized with the First Amendment, got the Trump administration happy with them, got a Cloud Act data sharing agreement so US companies could lawfully transmit content data to the United Kingdom without having to go through a very complicated international procedure.
Right.
And so if they were really interested in public safety, right, that's what they would do.
That's an approach that would actually do something. Yeah.
That is, and not only would it do something, it'd do something quickly, but they have their own domestic regime, which has been focused on the policing of political speech.
Right.
And what they want to do is export that regime to the rest of the internet. So they want their speech controls to apply worldwide, right? Or at least worldwide to services that are accessible within the United Kingdom. And my client's answer to that is, listen, like, we're really sorry, but it's legal here. We don't think that your speech rules are a good thing in the UK. And even if we didn't, our constitutional rights are not up for negotiation. So tough beans. You're going to have to go, sorry, we can't help you, but you're going to have to try another way. So there are alternative ways, but by doubling down in the way that they have with the Online Safety Act and just being so committed to the idea that censorship is the answer, they have ignored, right, every other conceivable possibility about how to make the internet a safer place. And as a result, now you've got 15, 20% of the countries on VPNs. How useful is it, right? If someone hits a website with a VPN, you're not seeing their real IP address. In some cases, you're not even seeing their real browser fingerprint, right? If they're using Tor or something like that. So suddenly you've got the actual things that concretely matter in a public safety context. They're actively erasing by pursuing this censorship pathway. So it's counterproductive for the state.
It almost feels to me like they're doing that on purpose. Like I don't know why else they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are, standing right now. The UK's Office of Communication has declared that they want £20,000 plus whatever it is, £100 a day or something like that from 4chan. They gave 4chan a countdown clock of when they say it needs to be paid by or else. And reading the documents, one of the things it seems like they're reserving as a tool is effectively the blocking of 4chan, right? So within the country, where are we at, like in that countdown? And do you think that that's something that the UK would actually do, actually block 4chan for all UK citizens?
Yeah. So we didn't need to wait for the countdown to give them our answer. We gave them our answer the same day, and the answer was I'm taking your fine letter, I'm shredding it, and
yeah.
Buff on Ghoul. So that was the answer. So effectively. So yeah, that was our answer. And so maybe the deadline goes in a week, maybe it goes in a month. I don't care. It doesn't really change anything from our perspective. They could certainly seek a blocking order in the United Kingdom. We invite them to do so. And if they want to do that and demonstrate that this is a censorship law beyond any shadow of a doubt, with a relatively harmless website that responds promptly to law enforcement data requests when served, and works with the FBI in order to provide data to foreign governments in emergency situations, if they want to take a responsible business like that and punish them for exercising their First Amendment rights, that's on them. It's not on us. And so, yeah, I mean, and to be blunt, I think that the American resistance, given events unfolding in the United Kingdom over the last 48 hours in relation to the Prime Minister, I think that the American resistance to the Online Safety Act is likely to last a lot longer than the Online Safety Act itself.
We're good at resisting. That's something we do. Yeah,
we're good at resisting, and the Tory government that enacted this thing was not especially good at legislating. So yeah, and they didn't really understand. I mean, they didn't really understand the internet, and the people who championed this, both in the NGO sector and in the government, did not really. They're not internet people. They're not from here, and so they really didn't understand what they're doing. So from our perspective, yes, if they want to block 4chan, that is a possibility that my client was prepared to accept, and that's fine. The principle is more important, and ultimately, the UK has whatever power it wants to do whatever it wants in its own borders. That's their business. Yeah. But the server
can make fun of it, but yeah, nothing else we can do.
But the server configurations on a server owned and operated by a Delaware company, 4chan Community Solutions LLC, in Delaware, right from the United States. That is not the UK's concern, and it's frankly none of their damn business what happens on it. And so we're not changing one bit, not one setting, not one anything on our servers in order to placate a UK censor that purports to have the power to overturn the United States Constitution and the results of the American Revolution. And if they've got a problem with that, tough. We're not budging an inch. And to be blunt, to the extent that we inspire other Americans to do the same, then I think we've succeeded.
When I see other countries do this, I mean, other countries are interested in censoring American websites and companies too. It's just the UK is the most UK about it. I mean, how many comic books and books have been written over the last like 50, 60 years about the UK government censoring the heck out of the UK and the world, right? I mean, that's 1984 onward. It's just the UK is gonna UK, and that's what they kind of do. I've joked with my friends so many times now about how interesting of an experiment would it be if we just say, okay, realistically, the internet's kind of an American thing. We invented it. It's primarily routed through the USA, and the majority of all computers and software were invented here, and we kind of own it, whether anyone else likes it or not. What if we just flip a few switches and make it so the UK doesn't have access to any traffic that routes to the USA anymore?
They would surrender. They would surrender in 48 hours.
That's exactly my thought. I hate the idea of censorship. I hate it, right? Like, I hate the idea of we censor the UK or anyone else. But I don't know, it almost feels like the UK is a toddler that, just needs to be taught a lesson. And maybe just say, we're taking away your internet until you start behaving. Like, you don't get access to google.com anymore. You just don't get it.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in the UK and colleagues, so I'm not going to refer to the country as a toddler. But what I will
not the people, just to be clear to all the Lunduke Journal fans in the UK, you guys are great. Just, like Starmer administration and all that.
Well, it's not even the start. I mean, this came in under the Tories.
That's true.
Right? So this was an opinion that was brought. The Online Safety Act was a consensus enacted piece of legislation by both major parties. I think it shows how out of touch the major parties were with reality in terms of how the world works, and is part of the reason why the UK is going through such political turmoil now. Is that Westminster just isn't really fit for purpose, the existing sets of political interests that run the place. And they have legal theories. Their legal theory is called parliamentary supremacy. It says that Parliament can legislate that it's illegal to smoke on the streets of Paris, and it is illegal to smoke on the streets of Paris. But theoretically, right? But like built into that statement, right, is that Parliament can legislate something that's ridiculous, and it is technically the law, right, under English legal theory, but that doesn't mean that Parliament can enforce it.
Right.
And I guess the second half of that lesson, that was from a famous English jurist named Sir Ivor Jennings. I guess the first half of the lesson was absorbed, and the second half of the lesson was not by my English colleagues who were responsible for promoting and propagating this thing, because they had the belief. I think there was a fundamental misunderstanding in the UK about free speech in the United States. I think they looked at it, because they don't have it. I think they looked at it here as something like, well, this is just going to be like the EU GDPR, right? So we're just going to pass this regulation, and everyone's going to adhere to it. But they don't understand the EU GDPR and data protection. Nobody died for commercial data protection law, right? People died for the First Amendment, and they died for the First Amendment, and they've been dying for it for 243 years.
Yeah.
So they touched a third rail in American politics that I think they underestimated the significance of. And now that they've created a backlash, which is really, it's even from the White House at this point.
Yeah.
They've met for touching, and to give you some, the White House is responding to what the UK is attempting to do to some of the most reviled and politically controversial websites in the United States.
Right.
So,
it's friggin' 4chan.
Right.
Like, and all due respect to the people who run 4chan, I will defend my death their right to say all the stuff they say on 4chan. But my gosh, it doesn't matter who you are. You can go to 4chan and find something that will make you throw up in a bucket. Like, it does not matter. Like, every single man, woman, and child on earth can find something they find uniquely offensive on 4chan. But that's kind of half the point.
You can find it everywhere. I mean, so
but you know what I mean? I mean, it's a unique place in that regard, in that it's all consolidated right there, right? It's so all over the map of, that sort of thing. It makes it so easy to attack them, and it makes it also so easy to try and distance yourself from 4chan politically. Like, you're right. The fact that that any politicians would do anything to defend 4chan just shows you how committed people are to the First Amendment and to the general idea, because they're like, no, I will defend it to the death their right to do that. Doesn't matter who they are.
I mean, it's that the other thing to keep in mind is that the targeting here has been highly discretionary. So in the case of the suicide forum, there's I'm not going to name it, but there's a particular chemical that is known in the Right to Die movement as being something which is particularly lethal. And one of the stated justifications for going after this particular client is that it's people talking about, when you have a bunch of people talking about suicide, because it's a forum of suicidal people, they're going to talk about this kind of stuff, right? And they said there were a bunch of NGOs, and they said, we want to suppress this particular piece of information, which is the knowledge of how to do this. Well, that particular piece of information is also available in medical journals. It's available on Wikipedia. It's available on every single social network I've tried to find it on. So they're not
just going after the site, though.
They're going after the one site, right, as a symbol. And the question is it effective to suppress the information? No. Question then, why are they doing it? And I think the answer is because the target is sufficiently controversial that it is justifiable, right, to their political masters, because they talk about this one subject. But frankly, people who are depressed and suicidal have civil rights as well. They have the right to associate with other people who are suicidal and talk about it. And suppressing this one website to prove a point does not make those people go away. All it does is prevent them from expressing themselves, right? And to me, as an American, right, that offends me, right? That's the problem that we need to fix, is that, listen, if they're not doing anything, if they're just talking, if they're just expressing themselves and talking about their feelings, right, it's a discussion board. They're not going to hurt anybody by talking about it. So, and the UK takes a different view. There's this view that words are violence, or that people don't have agency and they're not in self-control. And so as a consequence, adults are incapable of making their own decisions about what they want to see. And that's the British nanny statism, and they want to export it here. And and they wanted to export it across a range of different websites, some of which don't permit that kind of speech, and which are purely politically oriented. And the answer that we have to that is absolutely not in a million years.
And as I was watching all this news unfold, you see Ofcom come after 4chan and Kiwi Farms. It's like, okay, obviously they're trying to make a point about that. Obviously they're trying to make an example of these very naughty websites with their curse words and their whatnot. But then I saw Jimmy Wales from over at Wikipedia, he came out and he basically said, whatever Ofcom wants to do, it ain't happening. Wikipedia will not comply. And that blew me away. Because you can't imagine a scenario until now where I'd say 4chan and Wikipedia have teamed up against an enemy. And to me, that blew my mind, that we've now got a scenario where Wikimedia and 4chan and Kiwi Farms are all on the same team versus the UK.
This is the amazing thing.
It's amazing to me.
The content that they're trying to suppress on the suicide website is also available on Wikipedia. But the suicide website has been targeted for enforcement, and Wikipedia has not. Right. Now, they've said, well, the mealy mouth things, well, there's social utility to Wikipedia, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's a political determination that's been made that one of those things is a defensible target that they can turn around and parade as a target. If they went after Wikipedia, right? If they went after Wikipedia, which has adult content, it has suicide content.
It's got everything on it. It's freaking Wikipedia.
It's an encyclopedia.
Right.
It's designed to talk about everything. And so essentially what they've done is they picked the defensible targets to prove the principle, because if they went after Wikipedia, everyone would say, this is unbelievable, right? So they're going to try to figure out a way that they don't enforce against Wikipedia, but the principle is the same. They still think that they have the power, if they want, to direct Wikipedia to do what they say. And the answer to that is absolutely not.
Part of me wants the UK to go after Wikipedia just because of the spectacle. They won't. But I was sitting there reading that and I'm like, they're not coming after you, Jimmy Wales. They're just not doing it. But I want them to. I want them to so badly, because all of the nerds in the United Kingdom would rise up and they're going to be done with it at that point, right? You come after
everybody.
It's Wikipedia. As much as I dislike parts of Wikipedia, come on, that's insane. I kind of wish Ofcom would, and I know they won't. But on the other hand, because they obviously won't, and they're going after, all of the websites that you're supporting and that you're defending here, it shows the double standard, and it seems like it almost. I mean, it almost makes the case easier that they're just selectively trying to politically almost punish people and whatnot. It's ridiculous.
I'll tell you about the suicide website that they went after. Just a few days ago, last week, they reopened the investigation. The investigation was never closed, but there was there has been this steadily increasing tempo of a drumbeat to do something about it, right? Because basically the site voluntarily blocked the UK. They said, listen, we're going to block IP ranges. We don't want to deal with this. We just want to exercise our First Amendment rights. We'll do you a solid, UK. We'll block your UK IP ranges. And they had a mirror, right? And the mirror, I'm not going to, there was a mirror. I'm not going to say who runs it or any other reason. It existed. It was also subject to the IP block. A charity said to Ofcom, hey, there's a mirror to this site, right? Gotcha. We found it. And we managed to get to it with a UK IP, right? And presumably they provided a screenshot or something of that. And so Ofcom turns around on November the 6th at 1:00 p.m. and they sent me Eastern time. They send me an email, right? And they say, hey, your client, it's on November 6th at 12:08, we confirmed the site was still available. I got an email at oddly specific timestamp, right? Considering they're doing an investigation.
Right.
I got an email at 1 p.m., right? So 52 minutes later saying, oh, by the way, your client's up. I responded almost immediately saying, well, I just checked my client's website and the mirror 10 minutes later, right? I said, I just checked my client's website and the mirror and with a London IP through my VPN, which, by the way, 15% of your adult population uses to circumvent the Online Safety Act.
Right.
Put that in writing. And I said, and I can't get to it. So the block is still up. So shut the hell up. What are you doing? Then 57 minutes later, what happens? Coordinated press drop with an NGO.
I saw that.
Coordinated press drop with an NGO and Ofcom. And then the CEO of the NGO in question posts, right, on his LinkedIn, and he goes, oh yeah, well, it shouldn't take an embargoed media release to get Ofcom off the plate. So they turned around, and these investigations are supposed to be confidential, right? So what happened was the NGOs and Ofcom were talking to one another. Parliament was piling on pressure. There was some type of
working together.
I don't know if they were working together, but there was communication, right, about an investigation that was supposed to be confidential between Ofcom and the friendly media and Ofcom and these NGOs. And what happened was they did a press ambush on the client. I turned around and said, why did you wait 2 days after getting the evidence to do a press ambush instead of just calling me and figuring out, okay, maybe is the IP block up or not, handling it confidentially and addressing the problem?
Yeah, is there a configuration issue, whatever, right?
And if there's a public safety problem, right, I'll give you an example. If there's a public safety problem with one of these websites, there's a law enforcement contact who knows how to get in touch with you, and they will call you, and they will call my cell phone directly, and they will say, hey, we've got a problem. There's an emergency. Can you deal with this? And what we'll do is we'll turn around the emergency request in 10 minutes flat. It doesn't take much problem. It's not a problem at all. But if you wait 2 days, you go and coordinate with the media and you do a press drop, you are not interested in public safety.
That's
politics. What you're doing is running a media campaign.
Yeah, that's PR.
That's PR. You're trying to defend the credibility and the legitimacy of the act, and you're trying to defend the credibility of your institution. And I'm sorry, but you don't get to run around threatening American citizens with prison time, right? Because you're afraid of a bad press release. And that's what's going on. That's the scale of what is happening in the UK. Is they are so desperate to try to get a win on this against this, and they have been trying to shut down this website for 5 years. It has been it has been the bête noire of the English NGO pro-censorship community, the Age Verification Providers Association. It has been their target for years.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can't kill it is deeply problematic because they enacted the law on the basis that this website was going to end. And so now they've said, oh, well, we enacted the law, but the website's still there. And the reason it's still there is because it's an American forum, which is engaged in perfectly lawful activity in the United States.
Right. It's not based out of London. So not a whole heck of a lot they can do. So what happens now? What do you foresee happening? I mean, there's a lot of ways the UK. I mean, who knows how they're going to respond to everything? You think that they probably will respond to the lawsuit that you filed to them, which, by the way, I loved reading the details of them attempting to get served, of that lawsuit being served against them.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. I covered it. Anyone can go watch my discussion of that one. It was very entertaining. But what happens now? Because we've got multiple websites in play, right? You know, mostly, you know, 4chan's got a lot of the primary press because it's 4chan and they're putting a lot of effort behind it. But what happens now? What's
So
the next steps?
the fight is essentially over. In Ofcom versus 4chan, the fight is over, and Ofcom lost because we warned them. We said, listen, I said, and you can read the correspondence because we published it all. I said, listen, guys, unless you're prepared to domesticate this order in the United States, we don't have to obey it, and that is objectively the right decision. And you know, the lawsuit is about seeing if we can get a U.S. court to confirm that the orders are not enforceable in the United States. Ofcom has probably some jurisdictional objections they're going to raise. And they're perfectly entitled to do.
Sure,
right?
Sure, go for it, guys.
I got to be fair to the other side, you know, in the litigation. And so, you know, they're going to raise their jurisdictional objections. We're going to raise our objections to their objections, and the federal judge will eventually rule on it. But the fight is over, and Ofcom lost because they staked their credibility on shutting down American websites and getting enforceable fines. Every time, right, that they send an order into the United States and that order is not obeyed, that is a loss. And every time that they issue a blocking order and they have to own the optics of blocking a website nationwide when the website doesn't care, that is also a loss. So from our point of view, you know, the UK is going to do whatever they're going to do within their own borders. We're going to do what we're going to do within our own borders, and that's the end of it. And if they want to start setting up a great firewall, right, of the UK, in order to, you know, or set up, I don't know, in order for the Online Safety Act to achieve what the campaigners. Well, what they'd have to do is they'd have to set up Red Star OS like North Korea,
Right,
where everything all the way down to the kernel is controlled by the government. Otherwise, you can get out, right? You can get around it. And that's the end of that. I mean, so either they're going to go down that path or they're going to get real and they're going to say, listen, we want to be a modern, technologically advanced democracy. And we're recognizing that we're chasing away our tech industry with our tax policies and our regulations and our employment regulations and various other things. And it's a fork in the road for the UK. I don't think the Labour Party and the related apparatus, sorry, little guy, heard a ring camera go off. I just need to.
that's okay. About 3 feet to my side, there's people working on air conditioners with power tools. So stuff happens. Life goes on. Yeah. It's all right.
Stuff happens. So it's okay, buddy. He's scared away the mailman.
Good. He's a real bastard, so he needs to go. Yeah.
So they're going to do what they're going to do. We're going to do what we're going to do. And what, you know, if they want to keep going down this road, I don't think they have the capacity to reverse course because I think it would be too embarrassing to reverse course.
That's what I keep thinking too. I don't think they can.
It's also going to be embarrassing to continue. And so whatever it is, it's great optics for us, right? Because we're sitting here going, no, we're standing up for the First Amendment. We're standing up for the rights of American citizens. And every time they try to get in, it gets, I mean, 6 months ago, nobody cared about any of this, right?
Yeah.
You know, now I get phone calls from freaking politicians, staff, like it's great because we're getting this, 1 second. Alexa, turn off music. The thing turns on. It turns on classical music when the dog barks. The classical.
Actually, that's kind of genius.
Yeah, it's kind of. So essentially, you know, they're going to keep. I suspect they're going to keep. Do you want to come back up?
Let's see the pup. So this is now to be clear to everybody. I was informed of this, which just broke my heart before we started recording. You do not have an actual pet hamster. Is that correct? You have an adorable dog, but no actual pet hamster.
It looks like a hamster to me.
Lift him up a little bit. Lift him up a little bit so everyone can see. Hey, he's adorable.
If someone tells me that's not a hamster, I'll see you in court. That's a hamster. And you know what? And until someone gets an order telling me otherwise, that's a hamster. So
yeah.
Long story short, though, that's where we are is the situation where the UK has two options, neither of them good. I think that there is a widening realization among the elite in the English legal profession that they've hit a dead end, but it's going to take a while. There's some loss aversion happening in the political side of things where they cannot be seen to admit that they spent nearly £500 million, right?
Huge.
Or $500 million. I think it was 300 million pounds. So $500 million, and hired hundreds of people and spent years of intensive legislative cycles to introduce a law that broke on first contact with a solo practitioner in the United States.
And spend a lot of political capital on it too. I mean, a lot of politicians, they put their heinies on the line to get this through. And this succeeding is their reelection campaign. And so, I mean, but again, this is England. I mean, how many, again, comic books and post-apocalyptic sci-fi novels and whatnot.
I told them,
this is what they do.
I had a phone call with a senior director in the Home Office in 2023, and it was a very nice phone call. The English are exceedingly polite, even if they're trying to push you around. They'll be exceedingly polite about it. And we had it was one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had with a government official. And he now has an OBE. They gave him a medal. He was such a good government official. So we had a great conversation. And of course, the last 2 minutes of the call, they said, well, so very nice conversation, understanding your position and perspective. But as you know, of course, we have the Online Safety Bill, and that's going to become the Online Safety Act. And your clients, presumably your clients' users, right, who are all fucking love free speech, your clients' users will demand that they be kept safe from all of the bad stuff on your client's site. So how do they intend to comply? And I said to the guy, listen, I can't speak for my client, directly here because they're not on the phone, but I can probably guess what they're going to say. And what they'd probably say is, if you can land ground troops, right, and in Delaware and seize my client's servers, then we'll have that conversation. But you should be advised, in that instance, my clients will be exercising their Second Amendment rights as well. So that's up to you, right? If you want to do that, because it would require a successful armed invasion of the United States.
World War 4chan, yeah.
It would require World War 4chan, World War B, before this happens. And I'm not going to say which company it was that was on behalf of. But basically, we said no, it's not going to happen.
Idea. Yeah.
But the British activists, right? They were going in and having conversations with the government, and they were telling them exactly the same thing. And the British activists, the government would turn around and be like, "What? Why do you hate children? Why do you hate vulnerable people?
Oh,
are you a bad person?" Like all that stuff. So they had this groupthink over there, and they did not understand the powers they were meddling with, right? They did not understand the First Amendment. They did not understand the United States. They did not understand Donald Trump, and they didn't think he'd be in power. And that's a big factor that's led to the success of what we've done, is that there's been no cooperation. I think part of the reason they're sending these notices, by the way, by email, is because the Biden administration was affording these notices with treaty recognition. When the Germans tried to go after Americans, they were serving them under the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty procedure. I think they knew that when Trump was in, that wasn't going to fly. So they just said, oh, well, whatever, we'll send it by email and we'll see if that works. Sorry, like I've seen enough of these right over my career to know how this works. I know there aren't a lot of it. I also think they probably thought I was just some schmuck who was just making a big deal on Twitter, and not a guy who's actually been doing this particular sub-discipline of law, which no other American lawyer does.
It turns out he's a real lawyer.
Great. Because I've seen some people being like, oh yeah, this is just like a lawsuit for social media. This guy's just did it. I was like not understanding, like, no, like literally this has been 30% of my practice for a decade. So like, and not only that, no one else practices it. I was the only one, right? For a long time. So they didn't understand. I think when they got our initial responses, they thought that we were doing it from a position of bravado. Because my responses to Ofcom are very consistently snarky.
Yeah.
And it is the same with Brazil. It is the same with Germany. It is the same with any other government that's trying to censor.
I'd say they're consistently American in style. They've got it. You've got that. It's like you're representing the inner psyche of the average, Western man who eats a lot of steak, and you're like, that's how I want to respond to the Brits.
I mean, yeah, basically. Like,
it's good.
I think they looked at it and they're like, oh, this is just overconfidence. It's like, no, I've seen every other country in the world, some of them with more nuclear weapons than you have, try to do this, and none of them have succeeded. And if you think you're going to succeed or they failed, you're not.
It's not overconfidence. It's just confidence. There's nothing over. Preston, before we head off here, this is all really, really fascinating, but I want people to be able to follow all the stuff that you've been posting, because you've been putting information out about this as new stuff comes in. Where's the best place for people to grab it? Is it on X?
Yeah, it's on X. So Preston J. Byrne, Byrne on X. And that's the place to find me. I'll post links there. It's got a link to my website, where we've released all of the documents about this. And yeah, so that's where you want to go, x.com.
Genius, man. Thank you for doing this work. You know, again, it's not
I'm just doing my job. Really, like,
I know.
My clients are the ones with their asses on the line.
That's
so
true, but just the same, for various reasons, putting the face of 4chan and Kiwi Farms and all these other websites up on the screen right now is a little less convenient. So having you here is very, very good. I appreciate it because, again, you know, these sorts of sites fall. Everyone else is next, right? If the UK and Ofcom succeeds against 4chan and Kiwi Farms and everyone else, you know, shows like mine and other ones are next on the chopping block, and I don't want to have to deal with that. I just don't want to. I don't got time for that. So I want to see you guys succeed.
The good news is the UK is going to lose. They don't know it yet. They're in the process of getting used to the idea. And I think the smarter guys on that side of the pond have figured it out. It's over already. They just don't know it yet. So we're holding the line. And I think the cavalry is going to arrive real soon. And when that happens, this discussion is going to be over. And I'll look forward to never having to deal with this issue again. So
that sounds fantastic. That sounds utterly fantastic. Preston, thank you, my dude. I truly, truly appreciate it. Everyone, go follow him on X. I follow him on X and repost him from time to time, so you can grab it on over there. With that, ladies and gentlemen, wave at the internet, Preston. Boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.